Human Rights Watch says that it is an independent organisation that reports on human rights abuses around the world. It claims it does not take any money from governments and therefore it is unbiased and fair. And it positions itself as the neutral watchdog. You can trust them to expose abuses regardless of your politics. But who funds that watchdog? These people. Human Rights Watch has received millions from billionaire foundations with deep Western political ties. In 2010, George Soros pledged $100 million to Human Rights Watch over 10 years. George Soros is quoted as saying, "Human rights underpin our greatest aspirations. Human Rights Watch must be present in capitals around the globe." This was not a gift. The money was conditional on Human Rights Watch expanding its presence globally while staying aligned with Western financial politics. The Ford Foundation has given Human Rights Watch $52 million since 2010. The Ford Foundation is notorious for using philanthropy to shape global policy agendas in favor of US capitalism. The Sigrid Rosing Trust gave Human Rights Watch $20 million between 2005 and 2024. Those funds were structured around annual programmatic targets. Rosing herself sits on the Human Rights Watch board, blurring the line between donors and board members. And that trust is full of Human Rights Watch activists. So you have a revolving door. And the ideology here is the European rule of law agenda. Diplomacy is a smokescreen. We can get into the hypocrisy of the human rights agenda in Europe, but for now, back to the table. Rockefeller Brothers gave $300,000 for climate, but it's actually using climate policy and environmentalism as a greenwash for the US global security strategy. It also pairs nicely with Rockefeller's desire to fuel climate financing and use sanctions on fossil fuels to target competition, because sanctions are not on fossil fuel conglomerates but on fossil fuel states. So on the one hand they'll take money from Rockefeller working against the Arabs, but on the other hand they've taken Saudi money also. Saudi billionaire Mohammed bin Isa Al Jaber has donated $470,000 to Human Rights Watch. This sparked controversy. You may have already heard this story. For 8 years, Human Rights Watch had an internal gag on this issue. Human Rights Watch signed an agreement in the accepting of this billionaire Saudi oil man's money that said the money cannot support LGBTQ rights in the Middle East. In 2020, after public outrage, that money got returned. Between 2012 and 2017, Bill Ackman and this Wall Street philanthropy, Perishing Square Foundation, donates $10 million to Human Rights Watch. This money funds Human Rights Watch's Africa division. Ackman is a hedge fund billionaire famous for hostile short selling. This, for him, is reputation laundering. He is using Human Rights Watch to clean his image. The Nigerian reports that his money funded between 2015 and 2016 later influenced US congressional holds on arms sales. This aligns nicely but indirectly with his separate investment interests in African markets. And from 2005 to 2010, Herbert Sandler gave them $15 million as a challenge grant. These funds were to build Human Rights Watch's crisis reaction infrastructure. So satellite imagery, rapid reporting, media-ready releases. These are all tools that feed the US State Department's ability to do briefings. You can see this in action during legislative debates, House debates in the United States around Darfur and Syria. Sandler got his wealth from subprime mortgages, and he as well is benefiting from this reputation laundering with Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch relies fiscally on these donor circles, and its reserves, over $150 million, is invested in Wall Street funds. Based on Human Rights Watch's audited financial statements for the year 2018-2019, there are no ethical or ESG screenings in any of these filings. The portfolio is managed as a standard institutional funds. That means there's a high probability that Human Rights Watch is investing into the things it claims to be watching out for. By managing their reserve through pooled investment vehicles without any ESG screening, their money is almost certainly held in global funds, diversified global funds. Microsoft, Apple, Exxon. Does anyone want to do the investigative homework and see what you can find on where Human Rights Watch have invested all of this donor money? Because index funds and EFTs typically hold shares in oiling, mining, extraction industries, arms manufacturing, and banks. Human Rights Watch does not disclose who their managers are or where their holdings are. You would think that they should have to do that, considering all this talk. But any endowment of this size being managed by somewhere like BlackRock or Fidelity will hedge a certain amount of funds for private equity vehicles. They routinely invest in the sectors that Human Rights Watch criticizes. Human Rights Watch, their financial stability depends on money from the sectors that they actively condemn. And they are shackled by investor confidence. Any advocacy that spooks the markets will actively hurt Human Rights Watch's own endowment. So you have donor conditions, a Saudi gag on LGBTQ advocacy, money coming from strategic philanthropic foundations, Soros, Rockefeller, and Ford, ensuring they align with US capitalist objectives. You've got obvious reputation offsetting here. This is reputation laundering through Human Rights Watch by actors like Bill Ackman. There's overlap between donors and people who sit on the board. There's overlap between people who sit on the board and the Pentagon. And there's overlap between Human Rights Watch and Qatar. What watchdog independence are you talking about? This is an organisation that can be bought to justify a geopolitical narrative. And for the public, the stakes are serious. Human rights language is becoming a lever for power, and true advocacy is being replaced by the humanitarian industrial complex. I have written a full expose of Human Rights Watch on my Substack, allimacforever.substack.com. This is freely available. However, if you can subscribe, you keep the work freely available for everybody. So thank you to my subscribers. And if you're not already in the Discord, I'll leave the link below. If you want, you can request videos here. Who else needs to be exposed for their lies?